This October, me and my sister took a trip to Nashville, Tennessee. We took a overnight trip to Pigeon Forge. By the way, Tennessee is very beautiful in October, November when the leaves are turning colors. There is so much to do in Pigeon Forge. One day isn't enough time. There is Dollywood, Parrot Mountain, Jurassic Park coaster, mountain coasters, and so much more we did not get a chance to see. And of course, there is Alcatraz Museum. And yes, my sister does look a little too happy to be booked into prison. And I look like I belong there. Here at the Alcatraz Museum, I was able to get some photos of actual items belonging to past serial killers. So I'm going to share a few of them with you today, with a short backstory. So let's do this. The photos I got to take were Gacy's clown suits, Pogo and Patches, his typewriter, and his makeup kit, all pictured here. You all know this man, John Wayne Gacy, the Killer Clown. John was born on March 17, 1942, and died May 10, 1994. John's house in Chicago looked like any other house in the neighborhood, except maybe for the neighbors complaining of the awful odor they sometimes smelled. Gacy was born in Chicago. He had 2 children, Michael and Christine Gacy. He was married twice. His first wife was Marilyn Myers from 1964 to 1969, and his second wife was Carol Huff from 1972 to 1976. His parents were John Stanley Gacy and Marian Elaine Robinson. John was an American serial killer and sex offender who raped and tortured and murdered at least 33 young men and boys. Gacy committed his murders in his house by asphyxiation or strangulation with a garrote. 26 of his victims were buried in the cool space of his home. 3 were buried elsewhere on the property and 4 were discarded in the Des Plaines River. Gacy had several jobs, but he was most known for his construction company and being a clown. Through his membership in a local moose club, Gacy became aware of the Jolly Joker Clown Club. Yeah, even that sounds creepy to me. The members would regularly perform at fundraising events and parades and entertaining at the Children's Hospital. 1975, Gacy joined the club and created his own characters, Patches and Pogo, devising his own makeup and costumes. He described Pogo as the happy one and Patches as the serious one. Gacy seldom earned any money for his performances, later saying that acting as a clown allowed him to regress into childhood. And of course, that is how he acquired the name of Killer Clown. Gacy's first murder was on January 3, 1972. This was Timothy McCoy. His second victim was around the year 1974, who remains unidentified. July 31, 1975, John Butovich, an 18-year-old employee of BDM, Gacy's construction company, was the third. 1976, Gacy abducted and murdered 18-year-old Garrow Sampson. May 14th, Randall Ruffett was the fourth. 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton vanished walking home. This was the fifth, and the list go on. We are not going to all of them, we are just giving the story in a nutshell. Gacy was brought to trial on February 6, 1980. He was charged with 33 murders. The jury deliberated for 1 hour and 50 minutes. He was found guilty on all charges. He was also found guilty of sexual assault and taking indecent liberties with a child. At that time, his conviction of 33 murders was the most for which any person in United States history had been convicted. Gacy was sentenced to death for each murder. While on death row, Gacy began to paint and draw. Some were self-portraits. The painting of Pogo the Clown was painted in 1985 and sold at auction for $12,800. If you want to see more of his paintings besides what I'm showing above, you can go to invaluable.co. May 9, 1994, Gacy was transferred to Stateville Correctional Center to be executed. He was allowed a private picnic on the prison ground with his family. His last meal was a bucket of KFC, French fries, fried shrimp, strawberries, and a Diet Coke. His final words were reported as "kiss my ass." Gacy was confirmed dead at 12:58 a.m. on May 10, 1994. Albert Henry DeSalvo was a rapist, killer, and suspected serial killer in Boston. He was thought to have killed 13 women in the Boston area between 1962 and 1964. Albert DeSalvo, otherwise known as the Boston Strangler, pictured are pieces of jewelry made by DeSalvo while incarcerated at Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Walpole. and the knife is a Bakelite-handled switchblade which was recovered from DeSalvo's body. On November 26, 1973, after he was stabbed to death with it. Albert was born on September 3, 1931 in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and died November 25, 1973, at the age of 42 at the Massachusetts Correctional Institute, Cedar Junction, Norfolk, Massachusetts. Albert had a son named Michael DeSalvo. His wife was Amgar Beck, and his parents were Frank and Charlotte DeSalvo. Albert's father was a violent alcoholic who once knocked out all of his wife's teeth and bent her fingers back until they broke, all in front of the children. He would also bring home sex workers and engage in sexual acts in front of his wife and children. Like many other killers, Albert began torturing animals at an early age, along with stealing. November 1943. When Albert was 12, he was arrested for the first time for battery and robbery. August 1946, he was caught stealing an automobile. Albert served in the United States Army. He was a military police sergeant and was honorably discharged. Between June 14, 1962 and January 4, 1964, 13 single women between the ages of 19 and 85 were murdered in the Boston area. They were eventually tied to the Boston Strangler. Most of the women were sexually assaulted in their apartments and strangled with articles of clothing. The oldest victim died of a heart attack and 2 were stabbed to death and was also badly beaten. There were never signs of forced entry. Albert's victims were Anna Elza Sleeser, age 55, Mary Mullen, age 85, Nina Naima Nichols, 68, Helen Elizabeth Blake, 65, Ids Ida Oga, 75, Jane Sullivan, 67, Sophie Ellick Clark, 20, Patricia Jane, 23, Mary Ann Brown, 69, Beverly Florence Simons, 23, Marie Evelina Corbin, 57, Joanne Marie Graf, 23, Mary Ann Sullivan, 19. In 1967, Albert was sentenced to life in prison. In February of that year, he and 2 other inmates escaped from the Bridgewater State Hospital, triggering a full-scale manhunt. 3 days later, he turned himself in, after which he was transferred to maximum security prison known as Walpole at that time. November 25, 1973, he was found stabbed to death in the prison infirmary. These are the fingerprints of Eileen Carol Wuornos from January 31, 1992. Eileen is one of the most famous female serial killers, largely due to the 2003 movie Monster, which starred Charlize Theron, and of course from her murders. Eileen was born February 29, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. She died at the age of 46 at Florida State Prison, October 9, 2002, while working as a sex worker in Florida between 1989 and 1990. She shot dead and robbed 7 of her male clients. She claimed that they raped or attempted to rape her, and that she shot them in self-defense. Eileen was born Eileen Carol Pittman. Her mother was Diane Wuornos. She was 14 years old when she married Eileen's father, 18-year-old Lou Pittman, in June of 1954. On March 14, 1955, she gave birth to Eileen's brother, Keith. Then she gave birth to Eileen at the age of 16. At this time, she had already filed for divorce, so Eileen never met her father. He was sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping and raping a 7-year-old girl. He took his own life by hanging himself in prison on January 30, 1969. When Eileen was 13, her mother abandoned both children, leaving them with their grandparents. Norrie and Britta Wuornos both were alcoholics. Eileen began engaging in sexual activities at the age of 11. At school, in exchange for cigarettes, drugs, and food, she also engaged in sexual acts with her own brother. Eileen claimed that her grandfather assaulted and beat her. In 1970, at the age of 14, she became pregnant after being assaulted by a family friend. She gave birth to a boy on March 23, 1971. The child was put up for adoption. When she was 15, her grandfather threw her out of the house, and she began living in the woods near her home and supported herself by being a sex worker. In 1974, at the age of 18, she was arrested in Colorado for driving under the influence, disorderly conduct, and firing a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle, and later was charged with failure to appear. In 1976, she married a 69-year-old yacht club president, Louis Gratzfeld, who lived in Florida. Soon after, she went to jail for hitting him with his own cane and was charged with assault. He took out a restraining order against her. In July 1976 in Michigan, she was arrested again at Benny's Club and charged with assault and disturbing the peace. She threw a Q-bomb at the bartender's head. In 1978, she attempted to take her own life at the age of 22 by shooting herself in the stomach. She had attempted to take her own life a total of 6 times. May 1981, she was arrested again in Florida for armed robbery of a convenience store, stealing $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. May 1st, 1984, she was arrested again for attempting to forge a check and cashing it at the bank in Key West. Then in November of 1985, he was a suspect in the theft of a handgun and ammunition. January 1986, Aileen was once again arrested in Miami and charged with car theft, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice. These are a portion of her arrest in her early life. Now let's get to the real stuff. Aileen murdered 7 men within a period of 12 months. All were motorists between the ages of 40 and 65. They were Richard Charles Mallory, age 51, murdered November 30, 1989. June 1st. David Andrew Spears, age 47, was found dead May 31st. 1990, Charles Edmund Coscaden, age 40, Peter Abraham Seans, age 65. His body was never found. August 4th, 1990, the body of Troy Eugene Burgess, age 50, was found. September 11th, 1990, Charles Richard Dick Humphreys was killed at the age of 56. Walter Geno Antonio, age 62, was found November 19th, 1990. All of her victims that were found had been shot multiple times. On January 9th, 1991, Aileen was arrested at the Last Resort Bar. January 14th, 1992, she went to trial for the murder of Richard Mallory. She was convicted of his murder on January 27th, 1992. 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. On May 15th, 1992, Aileen was given 3 more death sentences. Then on November 1992, she received her 5th death sentence. On February 1993, she was sentenced to death once again. In all, she was handed 6 death sentences. Aileen was incarcerated at the Florida Department of Corrections. Burrard Correctional Institution death row for women. She was transferred to the Florida State Prison for execution. Wanos was executed by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. She did not want a last meal, just a cup of coffee. Aileen was cremated and her ashes scattered beneath a tree in Michigan. Okay everyone, that is it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. Good night all.